Welcome back to another edition of Higher Education Today. I'm your host, Stephen Roy Goodman. I'm here in the Longworth House office building, where we're going to be speaking about affordable textbooks. And I'm here with a number of people, but most importantly, I'm here with Congressman Jared Polis, who is from Colorado. And we're going to start with the congressman who is going to speak about his initiatives and affordable textbooks.
So I introduced the Affordable College Textbook Act to encourage open source textbooks, to really break this monopoly that textbooks companies have, where they are charging $200, $300, $400 for a textbook. And in fact, the average student cost in my home state at CSU and CU is over $1,200 per year just for textbooks. So we can collaboratively source textbooks. They can be the same or better quality. Of course, the contributors are, of the same academic standing and various professors, and then that can be freely available. Now, freely available online, but some people like to have physical textbooks. It can be printed and bound, and it might be a cost of, $10 or $12 for a textbook instead of $300 for a textbook. But when you look at where that $300 for a textbook goes, most of it, if not all of it, goes to that intermediary, the textbook company. So if we can take them out of the equation, we can get the same or better quality textbooks for a teeny fraction of the price. And that's why I introduced the Affordable College Textbook Act. It's also why I'm very happy that we were successful in getting a $5 million appropriation in the Omnibus Appropriations Bill that will allow for the creation of some of these databases around high quality, shared, open source textbooks.
Well, terrific, and thank you for your initiative. And if we can bring Caitlin into this. Caitlin is the higher ed advocate for US PIRG. Caitlin, welcome.
Thank you. So I think when we talk about textbook costs, it's important to keep in mind how much of students' money is going to pay for them. So we've done research over the years that shows that $3 billion of financial aid is going to pay for textbooks and other materials costs. And in this time where there's tuition costs are going up, less financial aid money available for students, it's even more important that we're addressing all these smaller costs that add up for students. And if we switch to these open textbooks, these more affordable options, we could save students billions of dollars each year, especially in those introductory level courses where not only do you have a $200, $300 textbook, but you'll have to buy a access code and online platform to do all your homework. So PIRG, that's the Public Interest Research Groups, we've been working on this issue for more than a decade. Students are really smart and they've found a lot of ways to get around these textbook costs. So borrowing from a friend, illegally downloading it online. But as things become more digital, it's more important that we're embracing open, freely available alternatives. So PIRG has been supporting the work that Congressman Polis and other folks on the Hill have been doing to incentivize faculty and institutions to adopt open textbooks through the Affordable College Textbook Act, and more recently, this new textbook pilot program for $5 million. It could potentially save students $50 million on textbooks in the coming year, which we're really excited about. But this just goes to complement the work that students across the country in partnership with their libraries and faculty have been doing to adopt open textbooks, where just switching over one large introductory class with a bunch of different sections could potentially save students $500,000, which is really exciting to see.
Well, if we can move this from millions and millions and millions to maybe smaller numbers, Cassidy, why don't we start with you? So how much money are you going to save if this initiative goes through?
So I've been actually paying about $300 to $500 a semester on textbooks every semester I've been in college, and this is my last semester now. So it would be saving me hundreds of dollars a semester. I haven't gotten a lot of financial aid from the University of Maryland, so it would save me a ton of money, and it would be really awesome. I've been in a class before where I had an open source textbook, and it was able to save me probably hundreds of dollars just on that class alone, and was able to do the homework on a website that was free and available for me. So that was really, really significant.
And Stephen, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've, again, had experiences where I pay a ton of money for textbooks each semester, $500, $600. And I've also had some alternative experiences. So not only traditional textbooks, but also like Caitlin talked about with access codes. So I have a class, macroeconomics this semester, where I'm paying $130 for an access code, which is providing me with all the services that I can do on the school's current platform that we use, Canvas, anyway. So it's really just a lot of unnecessary costs that are being put onto us students, and we are really glad to see these actions being taken to limit that.
Thank you. And Jonathan, you're here not only representing yourself, but you're also the speaker of the University of Maryland Student Government, if I'm not mistaken.
And so this is an issue that's extremely important to us as we look at affordability for students on this campus and all the costs that they have to pay while they're at the university. And one of those biggest costs is textbooks. And so a priority of ours is, in fact, to make sure we have open textbooks for all our students. And so this past year, we bought the top 50 textbooks used on our college campus in introductory classes so that they're available for students in the library to loan out for a certain period of time.
Well, fair enough. And I'm going to ask an uncomfortable question, and I hope, Congressman, you don't mind this question. But if a publisher from one of the textbook companies were to be in this room right now, what would they say? What would they say they need to be profitable to continue publishing? Maybe Caitlin, and then maybe the congressman.
I would say that already publishers are feeling the pressure from these other alternatives like open textbooks. And increasingly, they're moving towards not just being traditional publishers, but also software developers. So they're building these access codes. And while they may be cheaper than textbooks, which we definitely appreciate that they're hearing from students like our friends here that the cost of textbooks is just simply too high, these materials don't go quite far enough. So I know that there are plenty of students that maybe have to retake a class or drop out because of the cost of textbooks. And these restrictive options like access codes, they just don't meet students' needs. And students need to be able to not just have the material in front of them when they're studying for that first exam, but to retain it beyond the end of class so that they can use it as a study aid beyond that point. And quite frankly, some of the digital options that are out there, like access codes, don't meet that need for students. And publishers are not, because this is a profit-driven marketplace, students need to have open access to this information, and frankly, they shouldn't have to pay to do their homework.
Well, we had a community college in our area, Front Range Community College, do a test where they gave one class of students that had access to open source, the other class commercial, and they found that there was no learning difference between the two. So I think it's incumbent on the textbook companies to show that they're actually adding some value. Certainly the more competition, the better. Competition from open source is particularly consumer friendly. And we also want to make sure that that they're spurred to innovate, and if they do innovate value add curricular things like sign-ons and different software services, they're welcome to do that.
But how would you answer the objection that says it's very difficult to produce textbooks because professors need to be paid for their time, and therefore the textbooks need to cost a certain amount of money in order for the textbooks to make it out of a publication?
Sure. So the professors who contribute to them receive a pittance. Hardly worth their time. They do it as much, if not more, for the academic credit than they do for the very de minimis compensation. And what we hope to do through some of these pilot projects and grants is be able to compensate professors similarly for contributing work to open source, collaboratively sourced textbooks.
One additional note on that is that the most success that our students across the country and plenty of schools in Colorado and other states have seen is in a grant style program. So faculty receive a stipend to adopt open resources, be it an open textbook or other freely available materials, or they get a grant to write their own books. And obviously, probably not as much as they're going to get from a publisher, but this is a statement of support that students have a right to the materials that they need to succeed on day one of class for free. And furthermore, some of the highest quality textbooks do get quite a bit of peer review and updating. So I think a good example of this is OpenStax, which is a publisher based out of Rice University. They're in the process of issuing a second edition of a lot of their textbooks, updating it with, new content, new data, and these books have been adopted by millions of students across the country, and they're saving a ton of money and being just as high quality as anything the publishers are putting out.
Thank you. Stephen, did you want to jump in here?
Yes, and so the congressman made a great point about the competition between open textbooks and traditional textbooks. But I think it's our job as student activists to make sure that the open textbooks and traditional textbooks are playing on an even playing field. And so what I mean by that is that we talk to a lot of students about open textbooks, and they really don't know what they are. They know, like Caitlin said before, that a lot of them can find them online illegally, but they don't really know what this industry is. And so I think it's incumbent on us to gain visibility for that and make sure students know about it. And so we do that through postering, tabling, talking to students out on the street. And we actually recently held a March for Affordable Textbooks that got the visibility out to campus. And one thing I'm really proud of about that is that we got a really wide base of student support, namely a coalition that included the College Democrats and College Republicans. So I think this is a really big issue that students are passionate about and can get behind, but just need to be made aware about, and so we can let the market work in its most efficient way.
Well, and speaking of the market, how would you respond to the issue of, the University of Maryland or the University of Colorado or Colorado State simply raises the tuition a lot of money, and then we save $300 on textbooks?
Well, a lot of this money is coming not from the university, but from outside grants, from government grants. There are even some private grants that can be offered. So it's, obviously the money is an issue that can be worked out between different institutions. But I think really the biggest issue we're dealing with right now is first visibility and the whole paradigm of how we think about textbooks and what they can mean to students in classrooms.
Well, that is interesting. And maybe if we can bring in your colleagues into this paradigm a little bit as well, some people argue that textbooks really have seen their heyday, and now we really should be focusing more on original sourced material. Do you have an opinion? Do either of you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, so this semester, I'm in 2 courses where we're not even using textbooks. And so this is a great example where we haven't had to use it in several of our courses, and even upper level courses. And these are areas that are very specific issues, but we've been able to use those resources like you mentioned. And like Stephen brought up, the key issue is awareness, but not only on the student level, but among our faculty, administrators, and library professionals, letting them know that they have those resources and those grants, like the congressman ensured through the omnibus package, that they have those resources available to them. And so that's something we want to raise awareness on our campus and on different campuses. And so one of the things we're looking at doing is adding a notation when students register for courses that lets them know what courses are using open textbooks before they even register for that course.
And I've been more lucky I'm a senior now. As an upperclassman, a lot of my professors have been a lot more aware of what's going on. A lot of my professors have been publishing things on our, it's called Canvas. It's available to students where we can get it through the library for free. A lot of my political science classes, I can get it for free. But as an underclassman, it really, really hurt me economically to do this. There was a semester where I took 18 credits, which was a lot to do, but 2 of those were just gen ed classes that I really didn't find that interesting, but I had to pay for access codes just to do my homework alone. So there was no way around it. I couldn't even just go without, or I would significantly have a lower grade. But there was a class that semester that I got to take use an open source textbook, and I also got to use an open source platform to do my homework. And being able to compare that to the access codes I had to use at the same time, where I was paying $150 simply to do my homework after I already paid for my tuition. It just didn't seem fair. And by being able to compare that in real time, it was a significant difference. I'm lucky enough that no matter what, my dad always finds a way to make it work for me. But I actually have a friend who had to leave the university because she could not afford the tuition costs, the cost of living, and textbooks to do her homework on top of that. A lot of STEM students have to use these access codes more often into their senior and junior years, and she just couldn't keep doing that, and she had to actually transfer to a different university, and that's just not fair. We're already paying a lot for our tuition. We're already paying for this education. I think that we should be able to do our homework for free.
Well, fair point. And Caitlin, how would you respond to that point about students needing to do their homework for free, or should be able to do their homework for free? Is that so? Should students have to do that, or should they have to basically pay some money?
I think that it's good to look back to just like 2 decades ago. This wouldn't even be a question. Of course, everybody did their homework for free back then. You handed it in, and it got graded by your professor or your TA. Obviously, there's, a lot more students in school, and, there's the greater problem of adjunct faculty not having the time and resources to do all the grading, which I totally appreciate. That access codes are a convenient way to get things graded. But with a little time and effort, we can get a lot of these grading mechanisms and, other feedback through a online learning platform. So Canvas, like our students mentioned, it's a learning management system. It's basically an online homework portal where faculty members can put in articles and other quizzes and homework and get everything automatically graded for them. It obviously takes a little bit more time and effort than assigning an access code that is like a ready-made product, but it pays off in thousands of dollars just for one class alone, and I think it's a really valuable use of time and resources, especially if we have small grants like the program at the University of Maryland and at other schools across the country to help incentivize this transition to free and open alternatives.
And Congressman, in terms of Colorado, do you see some more initiatives coming from the state level as well?
Yeah, I think this whole concept that students should have to pay to do their homework is absurd. I think most students would love to get paid to do their homework, but I don't know too many that don't want to pay to do their homework. I'm glad that Colorado's leading the way in a number of areas. Front Range Community College, we've had a lot of discussions also with Colorado State University. The student government at CU is pushing this. And while we can encourage it at the federal level, a lot of the actual textbook assignment decisions are really down at the faculty level. So it's an education and outreach effort to faculty. And then it's making sure at the centralized level we have the availability of high quality textbooks that faculty can be confident in assigning to meet their course requirements. And so that's what we need to do collaboratively. Yes, it can be done nationally. We can also absolutely do it at a state level too.
And I think that one thing to keep in mind exactly is it's on faculty to make this final decision. And there was a survey put out by the Babson Survey Group in December that showed that there's really low recognition among faculty about what open textbooks are and how to use them. And so the student PIRGs have been on a massive educational campaign this past year. We've talked to, in the past 2 years, I believe we've talked to more than 4,000 faculty about what open textbooks are, and just like having this individual conversation and answering really basic questions like, how do I find them? Where can I get high quality resources? And these conversations need to happen at a lot of different levels. So not just between teacher and student, but between peers and departments, and between the libraries and departments, and between different universities. There's a lot of resources available for librarians and faculty who want to investigate this. And I'd encourage them to check out PIRG's Open Textbook Alliance if they're specifically looking to work with students, or to check out SPARC, which is the Association for Librarians. We both have really great resources and staff to talk to who can help people find out what's the best option for their classes.
And many professors are excited to help their students save money. I find a lot of professors are almost embarrassed by how much they're required readings cost, and it's they feel that it's a barrier to students being able to take their class. They feel the pain that some students have in having to share textbooks. So if they have an alternative that's less expensive and the same or better quality, it's just a simple matter of educating them about that.
Well, that's a fair point. If I can get to the issue, though, of the librarians, because the librarians, it seems to me, are key to a lot of this. So would either of you or any students here like to chime in terms of how you interact with librarians or how we ought to interact with librarians to push this a little bit?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I think it's important to have all the stakeholders at the table, including library professionals, students, faculty, and administrators. And one easy way to do that is by creating open textbooks councils or task forces at universities where you're centralizing all the efforts towards creating open textbooks and utilizing them on any given campus. And if you have everyone at the table and you're taking note of what is currently being done on campus and what can be improved, that's definitely an effective way to ensure that you're hearing all the voices and making sure you're taking advantage of all the resources at our disposal and making sure all the stakeholder groups are aware of what's out there.
Another great thing is just having students be a part of the conversation. What's really great about PIRG is we're an organizing group. We get to talk to students all the time. In the past couple of days, we've talked to close to 3,000 students. A lot of the conversations have been about textbooks and just educating them on different options and asking, how much did you pay for textbooks? Most of the students I've talked to either said hundreds of dollars or I didn't buy my textbooks. It was almost nothing in between. And then I told them about all these other options that we're working to do and get, and they were blown away that they were even options. We're made to believe, unless you're more engaged and aware in this issue, like the way we are right now because we're activists, that there's no other option. That you either don't do your homework and you don't get to do it successfully in your classes because you can't afford it, or you just have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So I think it's really important to not just be talking to librarians and not just be talking to faculty. They're very important players in the game, don't get me wrong, but the students, we aren't idiots. Like we have experience with this stuff. Like we're the ones that would benefit, and even just letting us know like what options are out there, it's made a huge difference already with having just I think the pressure we've been able to push just by the knowledge we have has made a huge difference already. So it's awesome.
You know, the university is like any other community. People some people are privileged, and like myself and a lot of my friends, and can, afford pretty much whatever obstacles are thrown at us. But then, a lot of people are not. Actually, a recent study came out which found out that about 1/5 of university students are food insecure. And so, given that knowledge, and given that not all college students fit the description of mommy and daddy paying for you to go to college, and people really struggling to get there, and then throwing this one more obstacle in their way, I think is just unfair. And on the point of librarians, really in any community, librarians are a tool for the less fortunate to be able to advance themselves and gain free resources in order to be able to develop themselves further. And I think in a university, it's no different. And so that really applies not only to looking for jobs and things like that, but also on the point of education. And so open textbooks is a great service that the university libraries can help us with, and I think it's our job to make sure students know about it and can take full advantage of it.
Well, fair enough. In terms of the point you made about food insecurity, I realize we're talking about textbooks, but it's all the same issue in some ways because we're talking about people who don't have enough money to pay for tuition or their living expenses. How much of this, as students, do you see as universities just raising the rates because they can?
Personally, from my hometown in New Jersey, I've seen a lot of students who are extremely motivated and extremely capable, and would love to go to a big powerhouse university and really could, but aren't capable of doing so financially, and go to our local great community colleges, but aren't getting that same experience and those same opportunities. So I think affordable textbooks is one way in order to take down that boundary for students. And I would actually love to hear the Congressman's take on this whole issue of higher education affordability in relation to mobility within society, as someone who works on issues regarding that.
Great suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, the accessibility of a higher education is critical. And when we say higher education, it's not just four-year universities, it's also apprenticeship programs, community colleges. It's a pathway to a good career. And by the way, some of the folks that might go through a skills training or certification program might on average make more than an English or philosophy major from a four-year institution. So it's really making sure that people have the skills they need to compete in the 21st century workforce, and those are accessible, recognizing that, of course, many kids are not going to go on to a four-year university. And for those who do, to make that as affordable as possible, including, by the way, increasing the opportunity for dual and concurrent enrollment courses in high school, so students might only need 3 years or even 2 to complete a four-year degree after they finish high school. And for those who aren't going on, making sure that they have a transition to a certification or skill that allows them to support themselves with a good middle-class job.
And I think especially community colleges are probably the most promising place where we can put open textbooks into play. So at schools all across the country, there's the concept of something called a Z degree, or zero textbook cost degree, where the school has made a decision to take all the classes in a business major, for example, or your gen ed liberal arts associates, and they make sure that there's a couple sections that have open textbooks in them. And so students can just pay tuition to get that degree, and then they can either, graduate and move on to another job or transfer to another school, and will have saved thousands of dollars in the process. And especially because a lot of folks go to a community college and then transfer, you can get a lot of your gen ed classes at a much more affordable tuition rate, but also cheaper textbooks as well. And so these big introductory level classes are the spots that, as an advocate for open textbooks, I see as the most promising place for us to save students a lot of money. But also it's just the way that we can make this change felt, not just at four-year schools, but all across the country.
Well, fair enough. We only have a few minutes left. Why don't we start with any of the students who, thank you, by the way, for coming on to the show and taking time out of class. Anything you want to say before we say goodbye today?
Yeah, so to quickly add on to the point you previously made, as an out-of-state student, I have to pay thousands and thousands for tuition, rent, and textbooks. And as someone who wants to ultimately go into public service, I'm going to be strapped with thousands in loans when I graduate, and I might not be able to choose a career, choose a job that I'm passionate about solely because I have to focus on paying back my loans. And so open textbooks is one step we could be taking to ensure that our students are graduating with less loans and that college is more affordable for all students.
So I think the point as a student I want to emphasize most is that this is we aren't students just begging for free things, as some people who disagree with us may want to assert. Really, what we're doing is, like Caitlin said, is it's just combating predatory practices. It's going back to what what the root of education is, and in that it's you do work and you pay for instruction, and you don't pay to do your work. So I think that's the main thing, and that what we're asking is not too much, and it's very reasonable.
And then I just want to emphasize that students should be part of this conversation. We know what's going on in our lives, I think the most, because we're living them. And we've been able to, as activists, who, like we said, that we're well off, we have our parents' support and help, and we've been able to use that extra time that we don't have to use, for example, working so that we can pay for these textbooks, to work so that we can help our peers and the students that we go to school with to afford textbooks even more. I was actually in the SGA up until last semester. I was the chief of staff, so I have a really good relationship with them, and I've been able to add some activism things to there. We were able to push a resolution that the SGA introduced 2 weeks ago into expanding to push for a long-term solution for textbook affordability. Students, we just want to be able to afford college. We want to not stress over whether we can go go hungry or go without textbooks. We want to be able to have it all, but not because we're just selfish. It's because I think we deserve to be able to eat and learn. That's what we want to do.
And not pay to do your homework.
Hey, that's my big takeaways. I want to be able to do my homework and not to pay $300 a semester to do so.
Well, thank you all. And Caitlin and Congressman Polis, anything else you would like to add?
I just want to point out that this recent push for affordable textbooks, this $5 million pilot program, this is just the start of what we could be doing for students when it comes to fighting textbook affordability. Obviously, the congressman has worked to push the Affordable College Textbook Act for a long time, which we appreciate, but this is going to be just one part of fighting for affordable college. If we're going to be hitting $1.5 trillion of student debt in the next couple months, it's more important than ever that we are taking these solutions, like open textbooks that we know already work, and just putting them into play in more places. We can make sure that students all across the country, regardless of how much money their parents make or where they're from, that they get a shot at a good education, that they're able to complete their degree and get higher grades.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we need to proceed on all fronts to try to make a college education more affordable. And frankly, the progress that we're already making and will make on open source textbooks is one of the lowest hanging fruits and most obvious areas to save students thousands of dollars. So it's very important.
Great. Well, thank you all. If you would like additional information about higher education today, please send an email to highereducationtoday@topcolleges.com. And thank you for watching. We will continue to bring you quality discussions about important matters in today's college and university world. I'm Stephen Roy Goodman, and you've been watching Higher Education Today.